Meeting is called to order. Lisa, our new deputy clerk, Lisa Vincent, can you please call the roll?
Mr. Picard?
Here.
Mr. White? Mr. Waters?
Here.
Ms. Wagner?
Here.
Mr. Shear?
Here.
Mr. Polachek?
Here. Okay. The meeting minutes were sent out on the website, and if there are no suggested changes or any comments, I would move to accept those by voice vote.
I'd like to suggest a change of, it looks like my name got missed.
I'm sorry?
My name got missed, so could I have the correction of adding my name to the minutes?
Yes, sir,
As present.
Yes.
as present. I did notice that, and I wondered about that.
So the previous meeting, I wasn't here, so.
It might have, that's
yeah,
right.
That might have triggered the issue.
I'll second that. Any other changes? Okay, with the, there's been a motion to accept the minutes with the addition of Mark Pickard in attendance, as he was here at that last minute. All those in favor of that, please say aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Motion is accepted. Please make that change, Lisa, on the previous minutes. So moving on to item number 3, or item number 4, questions and public comment. And I do think that we have someone here today to make a public comment. Yes, sir. Could you please approach the podium?
Yeah, my name is Jacob Arndt, and I'm part owner of 6711 Linden Street, the subject of the annexation.
Could you turn up the volume, please?
Turn it up.
Just
I
point
don't know how to
it
turn it up.
There you go.
Just voice? Voice, okay,
Okay.
Sable? So I just thought I'd check in quick and share a document with you that we received in 2020. Do I do that on the screen, or do I just hand one out to you?
You can hand one at the end, after your comments, hand one to the
Okay.
city
Yeah,
manager.
quickly, just a quick share of document that I received in 2020, which is the estimate for the work to be done on our street, on Linden Street, which came to be $38,000. And then we were told that we would be sharing that with a number of other entities. So we would be responsible for maybe $7,000 or $8,000. And I just wanted to share that information and the document we received that was drawn up for sewer and water extension for 67 and 6711 Linden Street. So it was drawn up for that property. I think there's a typo there, though, that says September 8th, 2008. And we haven't entertained anything about that, about the sewer and water lines until 2018. So maybe that was the typo when we approached that question, which was 2018. And if it was 2008 figures for N6711 Linden Street, I wonder why in 2008, when we had just purchased the property in late 2008, why that was drawn up, because we hadn't requested it. And if it is a typo for 2018, then I would imagine that figure of 38,000 for the entire project there would be relevant. But I'm not sure how relevant it would be, or how genuine it would be to present a 2008 figure when we approached the city about annexation, and basically told that it would be that price, that we would be liable for just a small portion of that. So I just wanted to enter that into the record. Okay?
Okay,
Thank you very much.
thank you.
I'll just keep one copy of that, and then that into the record for you guys. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other comments from the public? Hearing none, let's move on to the director's report. Is Randy?
Yes, sir.
I'll turn it over to you.
Dave, if you could pull up the slide presentation, please. We have had a lot of activity in the last 2 months, so this will be a little bit longer than normal. If we'll go to the first slide, please. For street department, we have not, next slide, we have not had a lot of snow removal, but we have been spreading salt and brine. Slide. And this is just a few shots of the salt spread. We do try and be conservative with our salt spread. Slide.
Jason?
And this is just a shot, if no one's ever seen this, in the back of our yard. This is our salt shed. We are loading up trucks here. Dwayne is very proactive about monitoring our quantities, making sure that we're always going to have enough for any snow event. Slide. And this is just loading up the truck. With the lack of snow, we've also been taking advantage of the opportunity to fill potholes. It's always nice when you can do it now instead of having a million of them in the spring. Slide. Slide. And slide. Electric department, been very busy. The recent windstorms last week caused a number of localized power outages. So we're doing a lot of troubleshooting, a couple of late nights. Slide. Particularly out to the north of us on Highway G. This is near Dolph Dairy. The high winds were shaking that pole that it actually broke the cutout, the ceramic cutout. Slide. And what was most dangerous out here was just the traffic. There wasn't a lot, but when cars would come in, they just don't slow down, and it gets very dangerous. Slide. But here they've replaced the cutout, which is up there, and one of the linemen is now using a stick to close it, and it was successful, so we were able to move on from this. Slide. But then further up the road, this particular pole, the one on the angle, had busted right at the base. A lot of these poles are older, they are in very acidic soil, which eats away at the wood. So this is a frequent occurrence at times in high winds. But they are they're planting the new pole, then they're gonna hold this one and then remove it. Slide. That's what they're doing there. The arm there is clawing onto the old pole and they're taking it down now. Slide. The cold winds and cold temperatures also create problems for some residents. You'll have at times a freeze-thaw effect with the ice that can accumulate in some of the pipes when these homes are being built. And what that can do is retract the cables and pull it out of the meter, which happened at this house. So the crew responded in order to restore power. We used this service saver device that we purchased last year. It enables us to hook up to the meter and basically reestablish power for a day or two until we can get back to it in warmer temperatures. Slide. And that's what the fellows are doing here. They're attaching the service saver and then splicing it in with the existing lines there, the 3 power lines, and then they're gonna come back when temperatures warm up a bit more, but this house was able to maintain its power then for the next 3 days. Slide. Last week, MEUW, they are a safety organization. They host their regional safety seminars at our facility. So all the local municipalities that have their own power companies gather here, and they bring in this really cool trailer. And these large transformers are dead, but he has rigged them so where he plugs them up to a 120 volt, they are re-energized. And then the crew just, this is a training day. Safety is paramount. It's so quick that an accident can happen, and it can be fatal at times or cause serious injury. So it's very important that these crews, everyone meets about twice a year and performs a number of routine tasks. Slide. And here's two of our guys. This is Austin and this is Lucas. They're just practicing what they actually were working on last week, a recloser or a cutout. Yes, this gentleman here is from Columbus. So, slide. Slide. And they're just wrapping up the lecture time. Another big project we have just tackled. This is the CP substation. What we have here is our 25 kV line coming into it, and then it transforms down into our 4 kVs, and this is circuit 1. We have had a problem with what is called a reclosure. I believe I've talked to the board about this, tried to explain some of it. We've had a reclosure that's been out for some time. This type of system and device is outdated, so it's hard to get new ones, but we are able to reach out to another municipality in Hartford that had an extra one they did not use, and they graciously gave it to us at no cost. Slide. So these next slides is just the crew going into the CP substation. They're now going to pull out the old reclosure. Slide. And this is a good shot of it right there. The reclosure serves the purpose of whenever there is a fault, they will shut the lines down, but then it will kick them back on. This is typically, if it's the fault, it could be a branch that fell on the lines. So this will turn back on its own, but if the fault still exists, it will go out again and it will try one more time or 2 more times to kick it back on. After the 3rd try, that's when it will shut down completely and we'll have to head out there. But this is how sometimes you'll get a blip because this reclosure is turning the power back on automatically. But this one had malfunctioned and it had been sitting dormant for about 2 months. And the crews, we were very lucky to get a used one. Slide. And here they're putting the refurbished one back in. We anticipate having to keep that there for a year, and then we'll be shutting down the CP substation with some upgrades we'll be doing at our Tyranita substation. Slide. Slide. And slide. The water department, we have had in the last 2 months 4 water main breaks. Slide. And I outlined them there, and the X's, they're a little hard to see. We've had 2 on Grove Street, 1 on Washington and Scott, and then another one on Madison and Providence. Is that right? Prospect, sorry. The 2 on Grove. This one here, right at the intersection with Jefferson, was very serious. Slide. And this is on the top of the hill at Grove. Slide. We had to go rather deep for this one. Slide. Slide. And what you'll see here is what a typical repair. This is called a Hymax sleeve. These come in different lengths and different diameters. But they have a membrane on the inside of that metal collar. Slide. And you're able to fasten that on and seal up the brake. And that normally is 100% successful. Slide. Excuse me. This is at Washington and Scott. This one was a problem to find. It was not immediately evident where the brake was, so we did have to go searching for it, and the hole got a bit larger than we wanted, unfortunately, but we did eventually find the repair. Slide. Slide. Now this one was at the bottom of Grove and Jefferson. Unfortunately, it starts freezing then too, so we were having very slippery conditions as vehicles were coming down the road. We spent a lot of time just trying to keep traction there and trying to limit traffic away from the area. Slide. And another problem we had, 2 other problems are evident here. We were having trench instability. We had to bring in a trench box. But you can see the trench caving in here. And this was a continual problem. The more you dug, the bigger it got. And Another problem was this wasn't just a simple little crack that we could put a Hymax sleeve on. This was a section of pipe, and it was fractured. So we ended up having to cut off two ends. Unfortunately, I couldn't get those in the picture because this part of the trench collapsed on it. But we ended up having to replace it with a section of pipe and two sleeves on each side. Slide. There's a better shot of the pipe in question. You can see the fracturing there. Slide. In wastewater. Slide. So we undertook a lining project for a sewer main that goes underneath what is called the Conger Canal on the other side of the lake. One of our operators, two of them actually, just doing their routine televising and that, televised this run, slide. This run right here from one manhole to the next, and found that this pipe that goes under the Conger Canal was in disrepair. So the decision was made quickly to basically for remediation to line it. Dwayne and I consulted with Bill Kiesling, our foreman, and we immediately contacted Hammerhead in town here, and they put us in contact with a good contractor called Sewer Ninjas. And so we spent about, Dwayne and I spent many hours, but the whole team spent about a day just planning and putting together an action plan. Slide. So this is Conger Canal. The flow goes this way, underneath the canal, and eventually up here to a lift station. But this run right here, the pipe is encased in concrete. It was showing a good deal of deterioration. I was told by one of the neighbors that when they conducted some dredging out there, they observed the excavator getting hung up on something right in this area, and instead of being cautious, just started tugging on it. We just saw no signs of, there was no break in the system, but there was just some disjointing. So the next few slides are going to show the process, and then I have a couple of videos we're going to run through. I can give you, just to give you an idea of what it looked like before and what the lining successfully looked like after. Slide. So this is the team setting up. We're on the south side here of the canal, and this is our televising truck on the north side. Slide. And they're setting up their apparatus. Slide. Slide. And then, so this is the delivery system. They're going to lower this down into the manhole and into the pipe, and then they start injecting their, what would you call that, Dwayne? I'd call it polyurethane type, liner. Slide. And slide. Before we get to the two videos, I just want to say that we currently have no projects open. Matt here is going to be discussing the Milton Street and the Linden Street projects. But if you could play the first slide, please, Dave, or the first video. No, that's the second one. All right, hit play. So this was the initial televising of the pipe. We are going underneath the canal. We are actually starting on the north, going south. And you can see just the metal pipe here is corroded away. This is concrete here, the encasement. And many examples of that. So it was determined right away that we needed to do something. Okay, you can stop that, Dave, and play number 2, please. And hit play. And this is the lined product. Whoa. This is the lined product. You can see it's much smoother now. This will outlive everyone in this room, this system. It is a long-term solution. And not only can the sewer be delivered now, but it will protect the integrity of the lake. Thank you, Dave. That is all I have for a report. Does anyone have any questions for me?
Any questions for Randy?
An inch thick.
Any other questions? Nope. Hearing none, I guess we move on to the Milton and Linden Street project.
Thank you. Dave, can you pull up the presentation, please? As that's getting pulled up, I've been in front of the board last number of years. I don't know all of you, but I do recognize a few faces. My name is Matt Hoslett with Strand Associates. I will be the project manager on the Milton Street reconstruction and Linden Street. Pardon, I'm battling a little tickle in my throat here the last couple of days. The Linden Street utility extension. A little bit of background about me. I've been with Strand Associates for about 7.5 years out of college. Specifically been working in Lake Mills for about the last 6 years. I've been on pretty much all of the road construction projects the last number of years, starting with Mulberry Street, Oak, College, all the Brookstone phases that we've been up to. And I will kind of walk through, high level Milton Street reconstruction, Linden Street, and then, touch on the tree protection policy from June that we'll be incorporating, along with the Milton Street electrical that was kind of added on as part of our contract. Next. So Milton Street is, as you guys know, is one long block from Main Street to South Ferry Drive. It'll be a full reconstruction, new water, new sewer, roadway, along with sidewalk replacement, and I'll touch into that a little bit more a little later. Next. Linden Street. Linden Street was added on in just earlier in 2025 here from the annexation that we kind of heard about a little bit ago from the Arndt property. This is just going to be a sewer and water utility extension, and then stubbing out water services and sanitary sewer service for possible future annexations to the other properties. We are only going to be going up about 250 feet from Pine Street. We are not anticipating to touch the apron or the concrete sidewalk. So that's a relatively simple construction process. Next. The anticipated project schedule, right now we have the bid opening on March 20th with a anticipated spring construction start. We will leave the window open for the contractor to start, as possibly as soon as end of April, extending through the substantial completion will be before the school starts in the end of August. While we do have a big window for the contractor to complete the work, we will put a mandated contract completion of 10 weeks upon the start of the project. So as soon as the contractor starts, they will have to have completion within 10 weeks of starting. That helps with, the contractor not able to leave and then they're gone for weeks at a time and there's no work being done on the street. Next. So I know in your packets you have the full drawing set. I did grab just a couple sheets here of the plan profile drawings. It shows the replacement of the sanitary sewer and the water main along with sidewalk replacement. You'll see the circles, and I'll touch on this a little bit. That's our tree protection zone radiuses of each tree that was surveyed from Eric and his staff. You will note that there is no storm sewer being either added or replaced. That is due to just the profile of the road. It is such a short stretch from the high point in the direct middle of the road that the watersheds aren't large enough to have a storm sewer system. There is storm sewer on Ferry Drive and on Main Street that will collect the storm water. Next. That is showing the east side of the project. We will be on the east side. We will start at that asphalt concrete connection from the Main Street project back in 2019. So that's where we'll start. We don't anticipate going into that concrete at all. We will just start with that asphalt replacement. Next. So this is a staging plan that we're including in the drawings. We haven't historically done this, but with the tree protection policy being incorporated in our drawings, we are going to basically have a staging area where notifying the contractor where they cannot store equipment or materials during the duration of the project. This is to help protect the trees and the roots of the trees during construction. So those are highlighted in the different hatchings there. The hatching in the terraces, those are your tree protection zones, which will be fenced off, no work allowed in each one of those zones. And like I said, I'll touch base more on the tree protection policy as we get later on here. Next, Dave. As I mentioned, Linden Street is a sewer and water only utility extension. We are only replacing the roadway width. We are not adding curb and gutter to this, as it is basically a replace in kind project. Asphalt replacement, we will have on the south side of Linden Street, there will be what's called a screed curb that is going to be formed with asphalt to allow basically the collection of water. As you're looking at this, all the water drains from the cemetery down to the south. We're looking, west or south to north, left to right. So from the west side, all that water comes down. So to help eliminate, water going across the road as it is now into that property on the east, we're going to be catching it with a screed curb that will have about a 4-inch lip at about a 45-degree angle that will catch that water and bring it down to the sidewalk there, which we are proposing to put in a concrete flume that will go underneath the sidewalk and then outlet onto Pine Street and then east to Elm. Next slide, please, Dave. So the meat of this presentation is going to fall under the tree protection policy that we are incorporating in this project. This is the first year, obviously, since it was passed in June of '24, that we will have a tree protection policy in place during construction. We will include the specifications in our contract. The entire project, the base bid of the project, will have each one of these tree protection policy items included. The way that the spec is written and that the opinion of cost is showing is there will be deductions to help quantify and to help kind of get a price of what each one of these items ultimately will cost. It is hard to quantify, I will admit that, because we don't know how much it is going to cost for each one of these items, but just kind of go through each element of the tree protection zone. We have the fencing. That will be an orange fence that will be, from the back of the curb to the front of the sidewalk in the terrace, and it basically shows no work allowed in that zone. There is a root cutting requirement. Everything is kind of spelled out in the specifications. It spells out different size roots that possibly are damaged and what to do in each scenario. There may be cases of hand forming some curb and gutter when a machine pour curb and gutter is not allowed due to roots that are in close proximity of the excavation for the curb. There is some language in the specifications about what to do during damaged root protection procedures. So if a root would be damaged, what kind of actions to kind of go through to help clean cut that root and help seal it up. Soil compaction requirements. There are soil compaction requirements, that is primarily showing that staging plan that I referenced to not allow any heavy equipment or machine or material kind of stationary right over a tree root. But these tree protection zone fencing will help the contractor not place a material or an equipment within that zone. At the end of the specifications, there is language about liquidated damages on a number of different items. There are liquidated damages for root damage.
This was the development of a tree protection policy during city infrastructure projects. The council then last year adopted it as a pilot. And so what they wanted to do is go through the bidding process and quantify what the cost of implementing these procedures is going to be, which is why you see the deducts listed there, so that we'll be able to see exactly what the cost of implementation is on this project, so that a decision can be made and a cost-benefit analysis can be completed. So it is a local regulation that the city council has pursued. In a pilot format right now, it has not formally adopted as a permanent policy yet, but they identified the next several street reconstruction projects to go through this process. The other thing to note is we will be requiring of Strand to have a certified arborist as part of the project oversight team while they're administering the project, simply because we don't have the staff to be able to dedicate one of our arborists to being on a project site for the entirety of a construction season. So that cost will also be shown to the city council when we get to the point of discussing award and signing of final contracts. But that will be incorporated as far as observation of certain activities. He mentioned root cutting. In general, root cutting's not allowed. If it does have to occur, it's hand cutting, and there's procedures for how to do that and how they have to be treated afterwards. And those need to have oversight of an arborist and other activities like that. So, long answer to your question, but it's a local regulation, city council driven.
Did you want to address the overall costs that was included in the
I
handout?
can. I have a few more
Oh, okay.
slides, and I'll finish up, and then we can discuss more. So the existing sidewalk conditions, I've walked it a few months back. I even drove through it today before tonight's meeting, and there are areas where we can possibly save the existing sidewalk. That's in pretty good shape. The image on the left, or both of these images, show a decently good sidewalk that is in good condition. That would help with the cost. If we don't need to remove all of the sidewalk, we can help save that. We did do that on College Street 2 years ago, and it wouldn't add a unit cost for spot replace, because everything is going to be hand formed anyway. So it's not like it would add additional labor cost if we did a spot replace. Next slide, Dave. These are examples of maybe some sidewalk that we would not save, either heaving, cracking, pitting, where you can see the aggregate in the concrete. Next slide. Just some costs here to kind of show what I was talking about. A full replacement, looking at about $64,000. A spot replacement, this was assumed at about a third of the sidewalk could be saved, either from the tree protection zones or from the cracking and heaving, quantified at about $43,000. Now, I don't want you to get caught on these numbers, because as we go through construction, if we can save more, then we wouldn't be spending as much on the sidewalk replacement. Next slide. The electric on Milton Street, this was kind of added a few weeks ago. A little background, Strand has been working with city staff during the design of Milton Street, but more specifically, the Milton Street electric. And we came to the conclusion of going full underground from the east side of Main Street underneath 89 and then all the way to Ferry Drive with full underground electric. We will be saving 2 poles that have overhead services on those. And if you got more questions about that, Randy and I can provide answers to why maybe that is. But in the contract, the contractor would be responsible for boring and pulling of the conduit, and then the city electric staff would be responsible for the rest of the work.
Only thing I'd add there is, as he stated, this would all be directionally drilled, all bored. There wouldn't be trenching, and that's consistent with the tree protection policy as well. We'll be I can't guarantee you anything, but we will be shooting to get under the root structure rather than trenching through the root structure.
Next slide, I think that might be it. Okay. Discussion?
So is this whole street going to be underground, or just the end by Main?
What do you mean underground as in like bored?
Electric, yeah.
Oh, the electric. Correct. Everything will be underground.
All the distribution will be underground. There are still some services that will remain overhead, but the system along the street will be going underground.
Thank you.
By other services, you mean utilities that are not city?
No, services into the home. So there are, if they could ask us to bury, but that's at their cost, to bury their service from like a pole into their home. But there's additional work that has to be done to prepare a home for an underground connection. So we don't require them to go underground. We keep their services overhead and connect them to the system that way. If they're already underground, we keep them underground.
Okay, thank you.
So we changed South Main Street to underground, and that same policy occurred there too, I assume? And I'm wondering how many, do people mostly go underground, or?
In my time, that one was before me, but
Right.
in my time, I don't think we've had any requests to bury services outside of like a new build or a renovation or something like that paired with another project that the resident was undertaking already.
Okay. And do you want to address the overall costs on this?
Yep.
Is it?
I'm gonna have to wait and pull it up because I was in a rush leaving and I forgot to print it, so I'm sorry about that. So I broke out overall cost, including the tree protection. And Dave, if you can pull up the overall cost as well. Oh, maybe he can't do it. Okay. Keep going down. Okay. There we go. So overall, Milton Street, including the tree protection policy elements, about $860,000. Milton Street electrical, about $92,600. The Linden Street subtotal is just under $121,000. That all subtotals to just under $1.1 million, $1,076,000 with a 5% contingency of $54,000, totaling $1.13 million. So that includes the tree protection policy. We did break out the alternatives with the deductions of the tree protection, along with those 2 water main items that we've done in the last number of years to get a price of what ductile iron water main would be versus what C900 PVC water main would be. The ductile iron we haven't done in the last 3 or 4 projects because the cost was significant enough to proceed with the PVC. PVC is becoming more and more common in communities, and the city has accepted the PVC as kind of going forward, but we still wanted to show what the price difference would be, so that's why we left it in the alternate. These totals, which do not include the tree protection zone, Milton Street, $765,900. Milton Street electrical does not change, $92,600. Linden Street, again, does not change. There is not tree protection policy on Linden because the trees are outside of the right-of-way. So that is $120,900, subtotaling $979,000. Again, a 5% contingency is $1,028,000. That difference, I believe, is like 92, about $92,000. If I do my quick math. Again, with the deducts, it's an opinion of what we're thinking for what the price may be. We won't know that for sure until we see the bids from the contractor.
So that 92 includes both the tree protection plan and the ductile iron?
Correct.
And can you,
I'm sorry, which one included?
the difference of 92?
Just the tree protection. I assumed that the ductile iron is going to be, I think it's about $30 per foot higher, so I did not include that number in. I can certainly, run back and do the numbers and share
I
those
see no reason for ductile iron.
if you
so-
need to. Okay.
Okay.
I have 102,000, not 92.
Same.
Did I miss something?
That's what the
Pardon?
spreadsheet
Yeah.
says. I got 102 as well.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, you're probably correct.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep.
All right, just
We're looking.
No,
at
just
numbers,
checking.
not
We're looking at the numbers
Yep.
there.
Nope. You're.
Okay,
Oh yeah. 130 and 28. Yep. 102.
okay. Further questions on numbers? Greg? Do you have any questions?
Nope.
Just regarding this tree protection policy, I'm sure the city of Lake Mills is not the first one to have such a thing. Has Strand worked with, or it sounded like you had not, but has
I
Strand?
personally have not. We've had staff members work. The city of Middleton has used tree protection policy. We don't work in the city of Madison per se because they have their own engineering department that they work. But I believe this was kind of from the city of Madison specifications, if I'm not mistaken, or close to
The
it.
contract specifications you see mirror closely to the city of Madison contract specifications. The narrative tree protection policy draws from a number of resources, including International Association of Arboriculture, as well as a collection of other tree protection policies that there's a spectrum across the state, obviously some with none, some with robust, some somewhere in between. And so the committee kind of took the pieces that they found most important to implement, to put into that policy.
So Strand has a little bit of experience with this, so.
Correct.
And that's what you use to get the work, come
The
up with the
arborist that-
estimates.
Drake, mentioned earlier, I'll be using the same company that Strand has worked for in the past in the city of Middleton. And I've consulted that project manager about it, and it appears that it went well in their situation.
Okay, any other questions on this? Okay, this is a resolution that needs to be approved in order to go forward with this project. And so, if there are no other questions, I would ask the clerk to read the resolution and then call for a vote. Does that work?
You still need a motion and a
Need a
second.
motion?
You need a motion to accept?
But the clerk can read the
After the
resolution.
motion?
She can read the resolution before,
Okay. Before the motion.
correct?
That's what I was thought. So Lisa, would you please read the resolution? That's,
Approving 2025 Milton Street Reconstruction and Linden Street Utility Construction Plan.
is that, she didn't have to read the whole thing?
No, just
Okay.
the title.
With that in mind, I would accept a motion to approve that. Or if,
Recommend approval.
I'm sorry?
A motion to recommend approval would be the most.
I would accept a motion to recommend approval.
I'll make a motion to recommend approval of the resolution.
Is there a second?
Second,
It's been recommended to approve by Mark Pickard and seconded by Greg Waters. And then would the clerk please call the roll? Or call the vote by,
Mr. Waters,
aye.
Ms. Wagner,
Aye.
Mr. Shear,
Aye.
Mr. Polachek,
aye?
Mr. Picard.
Aye.
Motion passes.
I'd like to follow with just one question on this topic yet, and that's,
Oh.
we talked about a lot of costs, and I'd like to just discuss a little bit how those costs are broken out as to who pays what, because we got utilities paying some things and the city paying some things, and I
Yeah,
don't know if there's
ultimately,
more.
ultimately, that comes out at the time that the city borrows for the project, and so, the road improvements, sidewalk improvements are gonna be a general obligation, requirement, so that's gonna be a city cost. Any of the sewer installation will be borne by the sewer utility. The electric cost will be paid for by the electric utility and water by the water utility. So those costs that Matt went through, they are the principal and interest payments on whatever debt we ended up taking out are covered by the respective entities that are responsible for maintaining it. And so it is broken out between revenue debt and general obligation debt. Typically, if for some reason, if we paid cash, if the council decided to pay cash for the project out of reserves or something, then each utility would have to come up with the cash itself. We don't typically do that though. But yes, each portion of the project is covered by the fund responsible for those improvements.
And the Linden Street is covered entirely by utilities then, correct?
Linden Street, there will be additional conversations on, as it's the first time connecting to the system, the typical practice of the city is to assess to the property owners for that cost of the extension. Now, only one of the property owners has annexed, which means that the city's jurisdiction is only over that one property. We do have to extend because the county won't permit wells or septics anymore in that area because of the proximity to our system. So we will be having a meeting with residents to discuss either voluntarily agreeing to a cost for the extension of it, knowing that they will have to connect at some point to the system. Absent the property owner agreeing, we can special assess the annexed property. If we want to special assess those still in the township, we require permission from the town board to do so. So we could seek permission from them to special assess for the improvements going on. If both of those don't end up occurring, we can charge connection fees at the time that the property owners do have to connect. There are benefits to connecting earlier, obviously, because with special assessments, there is a pay over time option instead of needing to come up with everything all at once. Eventually, that entire section, that is a town island, that entire section of the town will become part of the the city of Lake Mills, because the county won't permit private wells and private septics in that area any longer.
Thank you.
Thank you. So let's move on to item number 7, and that is, I think, Dwayne's hard work that he lives and dies for here.
Well, I don't know if I like that idea, lives and dies for. But yes, it has been a document that we've discussed a number of years in a row.
Right?
And I will admit, this is a minor adjustment to a presentation that I've probably given now for, 10 years or so. Don't want to date myself too much, but this program really kind of started in the 2015-2016 season. May or may not know that we did a number of work sessions with the Public Works Board in those years. We were receiving a number of complaints about street condition, and the ratings were showing that conditions were deteriorating. Dollars were not always allocated in the budget and were sometimes eliminated at the last minute. And so there was an emphasis on explaining street maintenance and street maintenance activities and how that is actually prolongs the life and actually reduces the overall cost of street maintenance over time versus not doing any street maintenance at all. So I'll jump right into it. Thanks, Dave. Next page. This is a 2016 report, so sometimes in parentheses, you're going to see I kept documents from 2016. So the city is required to maintain 35, almost 36 miles of streets. 2 of those miles are county controlled and maintained. So really the total is about 33.86. That's portions of County B and V that are under county jurisdiction. The county controls the ratings, the county does the maintenance on those and the data entry. So we're really talking about that second to last bullet point, 33.86 miles of maintenance, or 636,000 square yards of asphalt. Note that Main Street is not included in the 33.86, but it is 2 miles that is state DOT controlled, but it is maintained by the city. So street plowing on Main Street and any kind of concrete maintenance is city related. Next slide, please, Dave. From 2016, and this is just from the Pacer manual. This kind of explains what our Pacer ratings are in the Whistler's DOT database, 10 being an excellent brand new road, 1 being a failed road that is basically gravel. There are some parameters that we use of when typically a 10 will be a street we just reconstructed, so next year Milton Street will be a 10. It will be a 10 for 1 year. Once that year is over, it will drop to a 9 automatically. There are, on this slide, it shows some possible treatment conditions or maintenance that can be done. And in the middle column, it kind of talks about what do you see on the street when typically you're in these ratings. And obviously excellent to very good to fair, and so on down the line to 1. Well, what is this? I said, well, this started in 2015-16. Well, this was a chart that we did in 2016 that showed, next slide, I'm sorry, Dave, thank you, that showed overall street ratings were averaging in the 5 to 5.7 range, which if we go back up 1 slide, is a fair condition, and they were deteriorating even more. Back to, thanks, Dave. The last sentence there, 2024 overall Pacer rating as of December 24 ratings by length is 6.9. So you're in that solid good range. And I will say that that's been holding steady for the last several years. Next slide, please. This is an old slide, but it does show how this program that we're going to talk about a little bit more from 2016, how the ratings have increased. The last time I actually put the percentages to it was in 2022. I would suspect that the pie chart on the right will look similar if I did that today. Next slide, please. This was also provided in 2016, and if you look at the estimated costs on the far right side, which are very hard to read, I realize that, it shows what is a recommended maintenance that our program will do, anywhere from just crack sealing to crack sealing and chip sealing to crack sealing, patching, and so on down the line until you get into mill and overlays and pulverizations and then total reconstructions with a 2 or a 1. Obviously, those costs, as you can see on the right, as you're in the higher range, those dollar amounts are closer to about a $2 a square yard cost down to a total reconstruction. While it says 120 on this slide, our projections in our CIP last year were $400 a foot. So that has dramatically increased. Now that $400 will include curb, which this dollar, the 120, probably does not, but it does give you an idea of how incrementally and exponentially those prices go up when you get to a reconstruction versus maybe just a chip seal or a crack fill. And what we're doing is trying to prolong that life. Next slide. And here's the analysis in 16 that was done. The first option really looked at if the city did no maintenance work and had to replace and reconstruct every 20 years, every road in the city, you would be budgeting over about $2.5 million in 2016 dollars every year to maintain that system. The second option looked at a 5-year interval of maintenance using chip seal and mill and overlay and a series of work every 5 years. You can notice on the far right side that number dropped to $1.25 million per year to expend. The third option that we showed at that time was a 6-year interval, and you can see how that number is now starting to increase back up to $1.425 million. And so there is a sweet spot in there between probably option 2 and option 3. But ultimately, as the budgeting process in the Public Works Board at the time determined that we would use a 7-year recurring event as we look at these projects. Next slide, please. So I kind of preempted that next slide. So what is the street maintenance general plan criteria? It's a 7-year maintenance program. Typical maintenance activities in 5 to 8 ratings are a chip seal, a 3 to 5 rating is a mill and overlay, a 2 to 4 is a pulverization, and a 1 to 3 is a reconstruction. That's the general parameters. After new construction, the goal would be to chip seal every 7 years 2 to 3 times, and then overlay in a 7-year cycle after that. So typically with a new street, say the new street that was constructed in Brookstone this year, we would be looking at chip seal, chip seal, chip seal in year 7, 14, and 21, and then probably a mill and overlay in year 28. So now we're out 28 years versus 20, and we've used maintenance activities that cost anywhere from, and we'll get to those in a minute, from $2 to $10 versus $400. So that's really the meat of what this system, what this program does. This year's program, next slide, Dave. So what does it take to stay current? We need to do about 14% of the streets every year to stay on a 7-year cycle, which would mean in our current system would be about 4.8 miles worth of work in some shape or form. The candidate map this year has a candidate of over 10 miles, and I'll explain that a little later, but it has to do with budgeting 7 years ago. The candidate list higher because of the budgets in 17 and 18. 2025, at least the current plan that we've presented tonight, has 2.1 miles of chip seal at a cost estimated at $126,000. So again, 2 miles at $126,000 versus mill and overlay of a half mile for $196,000. And as Matt has talked about tonight, generally just the pavement portion of the street project in the CIP for 0.17 miles of Milton Street is $438,000. So combination of all that We're looking at one-year street activities of 2.8 miles for about $750,000. And at that pace, 2.8 miles, we are falling behind because we are falling to a 12-year maintenance pace. A number of reasons for that is because of that budget process and the choice of some of the projects we've done this year. Go ahead.
Yes, there's a big bump 7 years ago, but if the 14% is 4 point some miles, you can't blame that on 7 years ago if you're doing only 2.8, correct?
And so that last sentence is really driving home that this year we're even falling further behind.
This year, we're not on a 7-year cycle.
Correct.
This year, we're on a 12-year program.
Correct. Next slide, Dave. Thanks, Dave. So this talks a little bit about the current budget and maybe drives home by maybe in the future we want to talk about increasing the budget in future CIP programs. So the left side is the history of how that transpired. I don't have 2015s on this slide, but I would say that it was likely much less than 62,000. After the work sessions and the plan, you can see that in 17 and 18, there was a significant effort made monetarily, and we are now seeing that bubble hit us because there are so many projects in 17 and 18 that were completed are now candidates again. Over the 9-year period, it's just shy of $500,000 a year. However, since 2019, generally, it's been about $300,000. How does that break down on the right side? $300,000 for street maintenance, $30,000 for sidewalk repairs. $315,000 of that is in the general street maintenance, and $15,000 is in the special assessment. Next slide, Dave. This is a new slide. This talks about, if you recall last year, a number of things hit us. We did chip seal. The county did not do chip seal. We reduced the amount of work that that was approved in March. There were some changes to the staff. We reduced the amount of work that was done. And there was some reserve funds that came from last year's budget. Over the last couple years, there's been some reserves from dollars that were bonded. So in 2025, the budget reserve from previous year's work for street maintenance is sitting at $392,000. What staff is proposing is to not bond for new dollars in 2025 and aim for a budget between the 2025 budget, the 315, and the 25 budget reserves, which is 392. The current plan that we presented in the packet is for 322,000 plus 15,000 for sidewalk maintenance for a total of 337, kind of in that spot in between. Obviously, staff will analyze streets as they come out of the spring. There may be some other changes to the plan as we go through the maintenance of the year, and we'll obviously evaluate the budget as the season goes on and see if there's projects that we can either add to this to keep it under and in that range. I believe that's my last slide. So I can either stop here, we can take questions, or if you wanted to go through the maps and spreadsheet, we can. How would you like to do that?
Questions?
Sure.
So that last page in your presentation kind of points to the projections, and at the bottom you have an option 1, 2, 3, and 4. So the one that staff is recommending is option 2?
Is definitely staying below option 2 and trying to hit a spot in between 1 and 2.
Okay. So you're not asking for us to define an option at this point?
No, and I presented that to staff to try and explain what potential options we could talk about. What we came out of that meeting was, let's aim for under the 392, but also aim for the 315, which was the budget in 2025. 2025.
The anticipated cost is the 337,000 based on the recommended work in the list for sidewalks and for the repair work that we've identified that we think needs to take place.
Okay.
But that's still on a 12-year maintenance schedule versus the 7-year that we are trying to
Trying to.
target.
Correct.
Yeah, I think we'll need to do a,
Rework.
we'll likely need to do a higher, a $1.5 million year sometime in the near future.
Or look at increasing to a little higher than 300 in the future to maybe catch up. So I think there's some options there in the future.
And we have a newer street staff. There was talks about, we discussed whether we should use the entire reserve and do our $300,000 bond and do over $600,000 worth of work. But I'm not willing to tell this board or the city council that we'll be able to actually accomplish the $600,000 amount of work this year. And so we will have once again bonded and taken out debt for work that we may not be able to get to. And so until staff feels confident that we will be able to double the amount of work that we're going to do, we did not think it was an appropriate recommendation to make.
And
This year, it's $337. Got it.
And we're not anticipating bonding, we're anticipating using the reserves.
No bonding.
Right.
Got it.
So that might have a little wiggle room depending on what ends up being final.
And we do try to keep some wiggle room in the budget because inevitably we get reports of sidewalks that pose a hazard that we determine need to be taken care of quickly.
And if we could go to the spreadsheet a little bit, I'll touch on that. Maybe this helps answer your question. We have a ballpark number for chip seal. Sorry. We have a ballpark dollar amount for 2025 of $3 a square yard for chip seal, $21 for mill and overlay that's in the plan. That provides the total cost. When we bid the asphalt portion, it'll probably come in under that. And what we do is then we use the remainder, and if you'll see in column, kind of a column to the right, there's a number in the chip seal that $2 of it is probably for the chip seal, and then $1 of it is used for patching, curb and gutter replacement. And so every year, every street is a little different. And so we're trying to build in a little bit of that maintenance work on the asphalt and the asphalt patching and the curb work. And so that's where we always reevaluate, say, come August, to see if there's any additional dollars or if there's another street, as Drake has mentioned, sidewalks, or we've done scratch coating in the past to try and help some of the other streets in the city that have become an issue, say, in the first 8 months of the year.
Got it.
How much city staff is required for contracted seal coating? A lot of these maintenance projects are mostly contracted out, so I'm wondering what level of involvement there is in city staff for the various maintenance projects. I know there's some, and it probably varies from type to type. So if you could just talk a little bit about that.
A little bit about that. So typically in the past, crack filling has been done by staff. It has been a couple of years because there's been a little bit of turnover, and numbers have been low because of the turnover, because that activity takes a number of employees to do traffic control and the crack filling, the cleaning of the crack. I know that Randy and staff are looking to do some more of that this year. Go ahead, Randy.
We are. We did restart the program in 2024. We are going to make some investments in material and such to try and ramp that up for 2025.
And there is an option, if so desired, to contract that out as well.
It could be possible. In the past, there's still material here, there's actually a piece of equipment here, so it does make sense if we can bring the program back, as
Right.
Randy is intending, I think that is appropriate. Chip seal, in the past, the county has done it, obviously last year we had a bid out, we likely will bid out the chip seal portion. So, how does the street department get involved in this, in a chip seal street? If there are patching that needs to be done or excavation that needs to be done beforehand, they'll work with our asphalt contractor, which is also a separate contract, to prepare those patches and have that, that work done, maybe some inlet repairs that are occurring on those chip seal streets, preparing for that, anything that we're gonna do to touch the asphalt or the curb or the concrete. The street department will work with those contracts and themselves to repair those before the chip seal happens. On a mill and overlay street, similar, concrete curb replacements, working with the excavations and working with the concrete contractor. If you recall, on our concrete and asphalt bids, when we bid those out, we bid them in two different ways. We bid them if the street department does an excavation, we get a little better price. It means that our staff is doing some of the work. And then we also bid it out as the contractor has to do it all just because of staff timing and other duties that are happening. Sometimes we just can't get to it all, so we've built it in so that we get a price for both. I hope that helps answer that question.
Thank you.
Yep. And
You want to go over the candidates?
Sure. So there's a candidate map. It will be the one that's colored blue and red with 17 and 18. Again, that is showing that bulk of that
Okay.
17, 18, and all the those are all the streets that we could have chosen to work on
Right.
this year. The 25 proposed street maintenance is the one that's green and red.
Yep.
In general, most of the streets are chip seal. I'll note currently 3 locations where we're looking at mill and overlay, or 4 locations. Water Street, right out front of City Hall here, toward Madison Street. A portion of Lake Street between, I believe it's Oak and Washington. And then sporadically on Madison Street to the west, and I'll explain that one a little bit. The reason we chose that is there are a number of LSLs that were replaced after the last maintenance on that street. Some of those trenches have settled different than others and have caused the ride to be not as smooth as it could be. And so our goal is to look at some of those patches and mill and overlay in the areas where the lead service lines have been replaced already. We will look with Randy and the water department staff about potentially replacing some of the public side in other places along Madison Street to include. But if you'll notice on Madison, it goes from red to green to red to green. What our goal there is to fix the patches from previous LSL replacements and then chip seal any place where there might still be a lead replacement, which would cause a trench in the future again. The other street that is a mill and overlay is Aaronside. This is a non-curbed street that probably just needs a resurface to keep it intact. And that is west, near the lake, west of, I believe it's Griffith Street. Any other questions on the candidates and the map? And then maybe I'll slide to the sidewalk map and list. Again, this is a preliminary list, as Randy and Drake have mentioned. It is just try to incorporate all complaints that we've gotten to date, but of course, many new complaints will come in probably before we get to the end. If you look at the spreadsheet, we currently have about $2,500 or $2,600 buffer for that type of call that might happen between now and, say, August. Current list includes one location where there was an LSL for a sidewalk replacement. And then if you go to the map, The proposed sidewalk that just takes the list and tries to put a purple bar where those locations might be.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
Any questions for Dwayne?
In general?
Okay, one thing I have noticed, I did the math on it. Since this program began, our ratings in 2016 were 55% of the streets were rated good or better. And then that's on your passer rating scale, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, those categories.
Correct.
And then in 2022, and you indicated that if you did it today, it would be real similar. But if you add up those same categories, today they're 85%. So that speaks to the success of the program being implemented in a uniform manner every year, sticking to what your level should be.
I would agree that the maintenance is effective economically, and the pie chart's showing that.
Yeah, that's right.
Thank you.
If there aren't any other questions, yes, Mark.
You know me, always full of questions, right?
That's all right.
So, I guess the first question is just two. Somebody mentioned to me that Tyranina Road between Maine and Mulberry is rather rough. Is that a county responsibility? And does the county, the city, of course, has a working relationship with the county. Has that been discussed at all?
The county is looking at some maintenance in 2025 on Tyranina between Mulberry and Lake. I don't know exactly where, but I know they're contemplating potentially doing something there.
Just glad to hear that. Thank you. Does the city do a kind of as a policy, a street reconstruction every year?
It's our goal, typically. We did take a year off last year.
I'm going to suggest that maybe the city goal should be every other year and use the money saved in doing that to funnel that towards maintenance. Because as Dwayne kind of indicated here, if you consider the money for that 0.17 miles of reconstruction, if you add that to the maintenance, it's 58% of the total. So well over half of the total of, if you consider them together, is for 0.17 miles.
Yeah, I think we're going to have an opportunity to have some discussions about how, right, the question will be either whether to save and draw down debt capacity, right, continue to pay off debt during some years, or to do more work than we normally would have done in a year. But in 27, 28, 29, we have 3 grants coming to the city for 3 different road projects. So Harvey Road in 27, part of CP Avenue in 28, the portion between Jefferson and Lake Street. And then the final one is Westlake Park Place. That one's between Main Street and, this is where I'm going to lose it, and Ferry. Significant grants that we've successfully been awarded. And so those will be years in which we'll be able to do a significant road reconstruction project at a cost that's much lower than we're used to. And we could either, right, that ultimately it'll be up to the city council whether we do those and accept the savings, or if we could add work without an increased burden on taxpayers, because we're doing basically what we would have been planning to do at a dollar amount in that given year, but we're able to do more because of the grant money.
That could catch us back up to that 7-year target if
I haven't ran the numbers, but
it could help.
we're getting hundreds of thousands of dollars. I think we're getting close to $2 million over those 3 years in grant funding. So there will be an opportunity to probably catch up if that's what we decide to do at that point.
If 7 years is the optimal maintenance schedule and it's not 8 or 9 or 10 years, then if you don't stick to it, long-term, you're going to be worse off monetarily. So if you choose to decrease debt or spend it other places, that's maybe not the best choice. And that again is if a 7-year cycle is optimal.
They showed the numbers that 5 years are actually better than 7 years, but it was a choice based on economics.
Yeah, I looked at that a little more closely, and
limited on our capital.
it's not quite that simple, because the mill and overlay is a higher cost, and if you're only looking at a 60-year window, sometimes that mill and overlay hits in the window, and sometimes it's just out, and that will, if it's just out, then it's like, oh, that's optimal. If it's just in, oh, that's really bad. But in reality, a longer-term analysis might be more accurate, and I think that's part of the reason the 5-year looked better than the longer one. Was just where those breaks occurred.
I'm sure it'll all change when we look at it again.
And I will add to what Drake had mentioned, unfortunately, there is a long list of candidates for street reconstruction as well. Yeah. And if you recall CIP, not to say that it has to happen in 26, but there is design cost in 25 for Prospect, Mulberry, and Moss for a potential 2026 construction. So there is no shortage. I think my spreadsheet goes out to 2035 at the current moment for streets that fall in that range, unfortunately, in that 1 to 3 range.
It is a balance, and some of it comes to as well what we believe the condition and issues we've had with any utility under the road. Obviously, we talked a little bit about water main breaks. That continual water main break starts moving something up the reconstruction list because it's causing issues for us. So there's a balance to be struck, certainly. But I think there'll be opportunity to have conversation about increased investment in maintenance in the coming years if we choose to do so.
Okay, thank you.
I'll move to approve the 2025 street and sidewalk maintenance plan.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
It's been moved by Greg Waters and seconded by Nicole Wagner to accept the resolution. Lisa, would you read the resolution?
City Council resolution for approving 2025 street and sidewalk maintenance plan.
And then please take the vote by call.
Ms. Wagner,
Aye.
Mr. Shear,
Aye.
Mr. Polachek,
Aye.
Mr. Picard,
Aye.
Mr. Waters.
Aye.
Motion passes 5-0.
Thank you. And that leads us to number 8, recommendations for future agendas.
Does staff have any?
Oh, I can't remember the timeline, obviously, and if the city council ultimately chooses to go out to bid on this, the award will come back for a recommendation to this body as well. So that'll be in the coming months. It's February now, so we're a little bit out. We're a little bit out on CIP, which is later in the summer, midsummer that you see something from that. Randy, Matt, Dwayne, any other items?
No.
Was pulling up, if we stay on the timeline that we're projecting, we would open bids March 20th. So we would potentially be back in the meeting in April with our street maintenance and potentially Milton and Linden Street on April 8th.
All right. If nothing else, the meeting is adjourned.
Thanks.